Okay, so question 39. I'm going to try to make this video short because it's not going to be short. So as you can see, question 39 on the W3Resource website, basic Java challenges is write a Java program to create and display a unique three-digit number using 1, 2, 3, and 4. Also count how many three-digit numbers are there. Now, when I first get to the point, when I first read this question, I didn't understand it. And I was having a problem because I never could make just 24 unique three-digit numbers because I didn't understand what unique meant here. And if you're more observant than I am, you'll realize that unique means that there are no repeating numbers, meaning 112 does not exist, or 122 does not exist, 433 doesn't exist, 132, 244, it doesn't exist. That's because a number can only be one or use ones within each set. Well, I didn't understand it. There are 4 ways to answer this question, and my answer to it we did not take into consideration because I couldn't infer that from this example output that there could not be no repeating digits. I couldn't infer that from there. So the answer that I gave includes repeating sets, or I should say not sets, repeating digits, not repeating sets, okay? And my answer totals 24. So I answered the question, but not as it was being asked. This means that I'm going to have to produce a second video to show the answer to this question that only produced 24 unique digits where you don't have digits repeating per set, because that's what the question is looking for. And I only realized that after a long time. Now, I'll show you my solution to this problem. I'll show you my code, which you don't see here because since I did not answer the question as they were asking, I opted for not using this class until I do answer the question the day that they want me to answer the question. So I created a new class and I tested the code in my testing class. Okay. Now, what you see here, I'm getting ahead of myself here, but what you see here is a fully qualified name for my code, which is in this class right here. We'll go over that in a moment. This is the class name. This is an object created out of that class. As you can see, the object was not created within the testing class, but I actually created that object within the class that it belongs to itself. Okay. You see it right here. This is a declaration of an object of the same class. And I use it outside of that class in this class. And the method, the fully qualified name for the method includes the method name, the object from the class, and the class that it comes from. I know. Well, okay, now to answer the question, first, this is my last code. This is not my initial code. I'll show you my original code, and for that, I'll take you to my Stack Overflow page, where in figuring out an issue that I was having, I posted this question. Now, I knew how to check for null, but I wanted to find a different way to check for null. And here are some of the challenges that I had in finding a different way to check for null. Okay, these are 5 methods. I listed 5 methods, 5 main methods that I use to check for null and their result. Okay, so what was happening is on my original code, which is right here, this is my original code that I posted with the question along with my research that I did. I was producing only and always 2 of 66 randomly sets with a null value. So curiously, it is only and always 2 of the 66 randomly produced sets of 3 digits that contain a null value. And you can see that in my output, which I copied down here. Here's one of the 3 digit sets with, okay, I tapped twice on the thing accidentally, with the null values. And if I scroll to the right, to the left, there's another set with a null value. So 2 of the 66 3-digit sets have null in it. Okay, now a shout out to user Anon or Anon and user Daniel Hernandez, okay, who's right here, and user, and especially user Raylas. Okay, shout out to these users who helped me focus. Now, I was going through this issue because by the time that I had this code, putting this code together, I had been practicing code for like 10 to 12 hours straight, and I had no rest because I like coding so much. When I start coding and just playing around with Java, I just go on forever. So I really enjoy this. Anyway, I have been fried. My brain was fried, and I couldn't see the simple mistake I was making. Now, the simple mistake that I was making, Daniel Hernandez highlighted it indirectly, but it was really users Anon and Raylas who were direct in their approach and that could help me see my errors. First, Anon details the error here, which I will explain. I will read a little bit from it and then I will explain it in the code. Your nodes are basically the first two passes you do on the for loop, since num_s, which is a string array, is instantiated with three empty spaces. Basically, the empty spaces default value are null. So after my first passing, which he explains here of the loop, at index 0, you get your first number. So it looks like this. Num_s equals 1, a random number, plus null and null, the other two spaces, which are still empty with a default value. The default value, again, being null. So this gets handed down to random none, which is an array list that I have, actually a set. And then I print it out. I print it out in, I print out one number and two null or empty spaces. Now that seems very simple now that I'm explaining it to you, but after you're coding for 10 hours, you can't see this, you're blind. And so the problem is not so much that I pass it on like that, is that I print it like that. So the real issue here was that I had my print statements within the loop and within the code. Okay, system out print. You see that? It is within the for loop, okay, which ends right here. So I was not letting the num_s string, okay, which I declare within the method, but outside of the for loop. Okay, here's my num_s string and my random num set, okay, and my array list all right here. Okay, I was printing it before the set was filled with three instances. Oh, excuse me, with three digits. Oh, or I should say before my string array num_s was being filled with three digits with the or by the for loop that's nested within the while loop. I will go over that later on. Anyway, so I was printing it ahead of time basically before I pass three digits onto the num_s string array. That was my problem. And Raylas helped me see this, visualize this by breaking it down. This is why it's important to follow the logic step by step and to write it down. Okay, because this helps you see your error. And as soon as I read the first line, I was like, oh my God, now I can see it. I understood it when Anon pointed it out, but I saw it when Raylas wrote all this code here. This is the inconsistency in my code. Okay, first iteration produces one number at index 0, the numbers n, this is a random number, it could be 1 or 2, whatever. Then that n is passed to num_s, okay, at index 0, which is the first position right here. Then the other two are passed on. Then this random num_s string array is passed like that with one number and two empty spaces, which are equivalent to null. Null means empty. It's passed on to the random set, so it looks like that, just like num_s, okay? And it prints out. On my original code, that's the first error I was making. I was printing it out on each pass, and I was supposed to take that print statement outside of the for loop so that it will only print out when there were three digits within each set. Okay, so they go on to discuss that here. Daniel Hernandez, user Daniel Hernandez, did not directly point it out, but he pointed out another mechanic of my code that made me realize that I was doing that. So I thank him anyway. Okay, and so I refactor my code to solve that. Now let's go back to my code. Now this is my code. Now again, my original code was refactored to make it more elegant. Now, one of the things that I did is in that time I watched a video called how NASA produces space-proof code, so code with no errors whatsoever. And one of their philosophies is that you declare and initialize a variable only when it's needed. So nowhere else in the code, right? So you'll see that I have initialized and declare, excuse me, and initialize certain variables within the code when I need them. Okay, so first I'll wrap this method. All the code that you saw exists only within the method because I only need it within the method. So this class right here, okay, this class right here doesn't have any other code, as you can see. Outside of that method, none of the code that you saw exists, period. It doesn't exist in the class outside of that method. So that's me following the philosophy of encapsulating the code. That's what encapsulation means in Java, one of the four pillars of programming, of object-oriented programming in Java. It's encapsulation. So you hide details that people don't need to see. So if I show you the unique string method, you can see what it does, but you won't see how it does it or which are the members that are working within it, right? The tools, the items, they're moving around. Anyway, so one of the things that I do, as you can see, the method ends here, okay? Starts here and ends here. So this is the end of the class. That's the class. Nope. Okay. So what I do first is I come up here at the beginning of the method and I declare a string. Okay, we got 12 minutes. Let me go through this quickly. A string array or an array of strings that takes strings and I give it a size 3 because I only want to produce numbers that are 3 unique digits long. Okay, sets of numbers that are 3 unique digits long. Okay, using only numbers from 1 to 4. Okay, inclusive. So now I'll go back to my number generator class. Now, then I use the random generator class. Now, a lot of people use the math class and use the random method, okay, to produce random numbers. But there is, in fact, a random number generating class in Java called random. The class is called random, and that's what you see here. I'm using this is a declaration of the random class, type random class. I'm using RNG as an object of the random class, new random. Here's where I declare the space in memory to create this object of the random class. Okay, so I'm not using the math random method. I'm using the random class, which is what you see right here. I wanted to show you. This is in Oracle. This is the random class. Okay. And when you use an object of the random class, it starts to produce pseudo-random numbers. I'm going to skip explaining that. It's best if you look it up. It's pretty easy. It just means that it's not absolutely random because the seed or the numbers, the base of numbers that is used to produce the seemingly random numbers, it's not only limited, but if used in a certain way, reproduce the same set of random numbers, the same order, same list at all times. Now, I'm avoiding that in the way that I'm using it. And for the sake of my program, this is uses random enough numbers, okay? So that's what I mean by pseudo random. It's the theory behind it. Now, I'm also using the list class, okay, which is part, which is extended list interface of the hash list class, is what I should say. And also the hash set class, which is right here, okay, that includes the interface set. okay, I'm using the array list class, okay, which includes the abstract collection. Now, all of the, I believe that if you look for the hash set class, it also includes that abstract set and abstract collection. There we go. And if we go over here, let's go to the, well, it's supposed to be actually linked list or array list. Since I have array list here, let me just show you a linked list. Okay, and I'm missing one more thing, but we'll go over that later. Anyway, so I use the randoms class and I use the hatch set class and array list, and I will explain why in my code. Okay, the reason why I use the random set, which you can see here, I'm declaring a set of strings and assigning the memory in the system for this object of the set class that I'm calling random set. I'm using random set because I'm going to deposit a random set of numbers into of type string into the random set object of the random of the set class. Okay, so first in I declare a while loop and I use the Boolean argument within its argument within this parentheses, right? I use a Boolean expression, random set size, that is the size of this random set collection needs to be 64 before the while loop exits. I will explain that in a moment. Then I nest a for loop within the while loop. That means that this for loop will keep triggering every time the while loop checks to see if this argument has been met, if it's true or false, right? So as long as this is false, this will keep triggering until this is true. Or I should say, in this case, because it is as long as it's less than 64. So as long as that argument is true, the for loop will keep triggering. The moment that that argument becomes false, the for loop will stop triggering. Okay, and so what I do is this for loop. Okay, is I take the size of the string. So as long as the index variable is less than the size of the string, which is declared here to be 3 on line 8, this will run this code on line 13. On line 13, okay, if you go to the random class, you see that one of the methods that the random class gives you to produce a random number is a next int method. There are two implementations. We're using the second implementation, which includes a bound. Returns us to the random number between the values of 0 inclusive and the specified bound or limit exclusive of that limit. So in my case, the limit that I declare was 4. You can see the bound here. See that? Random number generator, okay, object of the random class or an instance of the object class, or the, excuse me, of the random class, produces random numbers with or up to 4 from 0. Now, the question dictates that I use only numbers 1 through 4, so 0 cannot be included. So the way that I solve that problem is adding 1. Now, because the bound or the limit is excluded, as we read, that means that it's producing numbers from 0 to 3. So if I add 1 to any of those numbers, then I get zeros, then I get results from 1 to 4. Because if it gives me a 0 and I add 1, then I have 1. If it produces a 3, which is about maximum number, and I have 1, then I have 4. So that way I keep it between 1 and 4. Then this method returns an integer, okay, which you see right here. This is the return of that implementation. It's an integer, okay. Then I use the integer wrapper class. Look that up, please, because that way the video becomes too long. To turn this integer that this produces and turn it into a string by using the toString method that is implemented by all the wrapper classes and other classes as well. And so random number string, which I declare here to be of size 3 or to have 3 positions, okay, takes the result of this code and deposits it on the index that is declared here, whether it's 0 or 1, which is, you see that this is incremented here until you have 3 spaces. So the length, which is 3 spaces. So 3 times, 3 positions. Okay, starts at 0 because we know in an index positions start at 0. So it'll be 0, 1, and 2. Okay, once that's failed, then the add method that is implemented by the array list, by the hash set, by the linked list class, and all the other class within the collections framework adds the 3 digits or this whole string, array of string, as one element. This string of arrays is one element which within the set, okay, which is the set that is called random set. So random set, the values that it can take can be of any type, including strings. So string of 3 numbers can be added here. Now, as you can see, instead of just adding the random string array of string, I am adding the elements at once. I did it like that because I was running into some issue, and that is if I added the array individually, then the system was returning the hash code, meaning the address of where that string array is in memory, and it wasn't giving me the value of the array. So I had to pass the set of the values in that string by indicating its values by means of the index. That's why you see it like this. That's the workaround that I could find. Okay, so that set of 3-digit numbers, which is also one string, is added with the add method that the set and that the collections framework incorporates, or the interface incorporates. Okay, so then following the philosophy of only using code exactly when I need it, I create an array list of type strings, because remember this set is taking for its value whatever it is, it has to be a string. So this array is an array of strings, which is okay. Then I include the array of strings for the set, and then I take an array list of strings, so with the arguments of strings, and I convert this set, or the values are in this set, the members of the set, right, into members of the array list. I pass it as an argument right immediately during the declaration of the array list. So I declare an array list variable called random list, and during the moment of assigning its place in memory by this code and the new keyword, I immediately pass this argument, so I initialize it with the members of the random set. Okay, then I use the collections sort method, or the sort method from the collections framework, to arrange the members of the array list, and then print out the random list, array list, and the size. I use the size for that method. So as you can see, I am declaring and initializing this array list right here only when I needed it. So this doesn't exist anywhere else on that code. I had to initialize declare this random object, this array of string, and this set of string outside of the while loop, because I couldn't do it within the loop. Otherwise, everything will be resetting to 0, or I will be creating new sets, new string arrays, new random generator objects of the same name with each loop. So that's why it had to be done there. Then I use it within the for loop that's nested within the while loop. And I then add it to the set right here. So they're being used only when needed. Okay, I use it to this with the set here. Okay, initializing the set and declaring the set and initializing the set here wasn't gonna work properly. I tried it. So anyway, here's where the unique string method ends, with all its code encapsulated within, so that you don't have to worry about it. And it prints out, it doesn't return anything. That's why the return type you see right here is void, because it's not meant to return anything. It just prints out a message. The message is the whole random list and the size of the random list. Okay, so now about the random size and the Boolean expression here, 64. Why am I using 64? That's because during my initial coding or my initial attempt to code, oh, you saw my YouTube channel and all that. My initial attempt to code here, my original code, I realized that the total number that could be produced without any duplicates was 64. As you can see, random size here in my original code is 66. Now, 66 is the original value, but that includes two sets that also have a null value in it, as we were discussing originally. Here it is right here. Okay, there's a null value there. And the other one is right here. There's a null value there too. So I couldn't include that. Now, why am I using a set and an array list? Because the sets do not register duplicates. So array list can register duplicates as one of its members, right? But if an array is, if you're using a set, if you're compiling or putting together a set, and you have the number 2 in there, and you try to put the number 2 in it again, it will not keep it because it already has a number 2. A random set is used to truly house individual values, individual members that don't repeat. So remember how I said that in the challenge you have no unique numbers repeating? Okay, is within each set there's repeating digits, but the set itself, so 1 to 3, is not going to appear twice. Now, the number I explained doesn't include, the question in this expected output doesn't include repeating digits, but again, I couldn't discern that the first time I read through this and I started coding it. So my set produces 64 sets of unique numbers, which also include unique, repeating digits. So I'll show you so that you see what that means. Okay, I'll run it, which is again here using the fully qualified name, which I already went over that for 27 minutes. I'm gonna end this video soon. You'll see the output here. Okay, so the output produces 64 digits, which are unique in that these 64 sets do not repeat. So I don't have 442 twice. I do have 441 and 442, which within each set repeats the number 4, but I do not have the full set repeating. Okay, if I was to produce numbers that do not have digits repeating, then I will also have 24. But again, I already went over that. I didn't understand the question that it meant it like this. So I will have to code the solution again to answer the question as it's meant to, so that I can then put it right here. Okay, so after 64, you have producing, you start producing repeating sets. So if I use 65 or 70 or any number outside of 64, let's just say 67. Okay, and I wrote it and I call this method again. Let me just wrap it. I call this method again. Remember, the method is going to try to produce 67. Okay, so as long as the size of random set is less than 67, this is always true, and for loop will keep running forever. All right. Okay, so let's go ahead and run it right here. I'm gonna run unique string method right here. Watch over here what's gonna happen on the top right. Watch up there what's happening. Okay, watch. You see the stop button is red. That's because the code is still running. You don't see no exit here. You don't see no output because the for loop will keep producing and it won't print out until it finds the total number. Okay, so I have to manually stop it. Okay, let's go back to the original code. Okay, it never reached 67 because there's only 64 unique sets that do not repeat, even though there's repeated digits within the set. Okay, there's only 64. I found that during my original code. So that's why I reduced it to 64. Okay, if I use 64 and run the code, then the code will exit at 64 because After that, you can only produce another set that is already being produced, like 322 or 141 or 123 will produce again. So that's why the system after 64, you cannot produce any more unique numbers. Okay, and I think I cover everything. So I use the array list class, the hash set class from the collections, abstract collections uh, class. Okay, so these are classes that cannot be instantiated. All of them extend the collections interface as well, the other interfaces that you saw. Well, here's the list of all implemented interface right here. See collection, list, iterable, clonable, serializable, queue. Okay, if you go to any of these, you'll see all the implemented interfaces. There it is. All of them implement the collections interface. Okay. Right. And subclasses, if you want to use the subclasses, there's subclasses of the set class. Use the collection interface again. Okay, and that is my answer to question 39, which answers the question, but not the way that they meant it, because I couldn't infer that they did not want repeating digits. They did not want repeating digits. Okay. Next, we'll answer the question the way it's meant to produce only 24.